There we are. So here's the menu of the day. We're going to have a quick review of what listening involves, what subskills it involves, and then we'll look at some strategies to teach our students. We'll have an overview of the listening paper. We'll look at different types of listening tasks that are on the listening paper, and we'll zoom in and deal with a particular task, which is plan, map, or diagram labeling. And we'll do a bit of listening as well ourselves, just to remind ourselves what listening's like. And then we'll have a Kahoot quiz about the listening paper. That sound okay?
Good, let's go.
Yeah, okay. So welcome, Josefina, and welcome, Patricia.
Good afternoon. Well,
Good afternoon, and welcome. Okay, so let's begin. Uh, uh, Listening skills and strategies for IELTS. Okay, so I'd like you to work in small groups for this one, this first task, and talk with a colleague. I want you to describe what is listening, what's the difference between poor and good listening, and what makes someone a good listener. You like it's for this, 4 minutes for this task, I think. I'll share the questions into the chat so that when you go into the chat, you can still see the questions. When you go into the breakout rooms, you can still see the questions. Yeah. Okay, so discuss with your trio. Put you into 4 breakout rooms should be enough. I'll give you about literally 4 minutes for these 3 questions. Starting now. All right. So, can anyone give me a definition of what listening is? Doesn't have to be a perfect definition, but it'd be nice to hear one.
Well, I was mentioning to Gabby that listening is the action of paying attention to a message of a person.
Okay, but that could be, you could say that about reading, couldn't you?
We were saying in our group that listening is one of the linguistic skills, is the receptive one, is a receptive one, I'm sorry. And it's when a person is able to react accordingly to what he is listening to.
But can you define listening without using the word listening?
Well, for me, it's like I said, paying attention to a message and understanding and really getting the importance of what the person is trying to communicate.
Yeah, I think paying attention is definitely part of that because it's active, isn't it? But also it involves hearing, so we've got to mention that because then you could confuse it with reading. Yeah, but that's correct overall.
Gracias.
Yeah. What about number two? What's the difference between poor listening and good listening? I think Cynthia, I think you kind of encapsulated it when you mentioned the importance that it's active, right?
Yeah, it is the fact that you have to be really focused, interested, and not interrupting the message from the person. So it's like hearing and really paying attention. I think that's the difference between poor listening and good listening, because if you interrupt and you are always trying to respond, that's not really being a good listener, I believe.
Right, right, exactly, yes. And remember, hearing is usually something accidental, um, especially in English. We don't always uh, make that distinction in Spanish, do we, when we're talking about escuchar or oír, or do we? I don't know. But yeah, listening is something active and it involves paying attention. So, and reacting, right? Responding. So, being able to respond, uh, is that what you would say it makes a good listener? Can anyone answer that one? What makes a good listener?
Mm, I think being a good listener is about being able to break the message that you're receiving through your hearing into parts and maybe like um understanding it in a deeper level.
Okay, yeah, understanding it at a deeper level. I like that, yeah, because sometimes what people say and what they mean, there's a difference, isn't there? And sometimes you've got to read between the lines and use your powers of inferring, right? Now, listening is one of the four language skills. What are the other ones? What are the other three?
Writing, speaking, and reading.
Yes. Um, so it's a receptive skill. Whereas so productive skills are yeah, obviously speaking and writing. But there's a link between the two oral skills, listening and speaking, as there is a link between reading and writing, the two uh, skills that are linked with the written message, the written mode, as we sometimes call it, right? And it involves making sense of the meaningful sounds of language. Okay, then what does listening involve? Well, we can say that it's to do with it deals with the characteristics of spoken language, such as rhythm, stress, and intonation. But here's an important part of it. The context and our previous knowledge of the world is crucial. And it involves understanding different text types. Remember, text can be written or spoken. So when we're talking about listening texts, yeah, we're talking about audio texts. So what different spoken text types can you think of?
A podcast, conversations, dialogue.
Yeah, dialogues, yeah. Do they always have to be dialogues?
No, they can be monologues.
They could be monologues, they could be speeches, couldn't they? Yeah. I've just been watching a series about Winston Churchill recently, and it was and it involved his speeches, which are quite stirring.
Narratives.
And in narratives, yes, storytelling. And how about where there's interaction, like interviews, right? Interviews with maybe one person, two people, but now on IELTS we could have maybe three people involved in a conversation. So it also involves understanding different speeds of speech and accents, doesn't it? Which can be problematic for some of our students who are perhaps more used to the North American accents. But on IELTS, you might hear Australian, you might hear British, you might hear African English, yes, from South Africa or the former colonies of the British Empire, right? Now, would you say that listening is difficult? Why or why not?
It can be difficult, and because it's also a skill that has to be developed. Personally, I'm not a very auditive person, so I really have to concentrate when I'm listening to things.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I'm not a particularly good listener in my household because sometimes I kind of tune out when my wife is talking. I know that's a terrible thing to say. But my wife sometimes accuses me of not being a good listener, yeah? Are there any wives here that have husbands that sometimes don't pay attention to them? Yeah, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I need to go to therapy, okay? All right, so please
No, my
click.
wife as well.
Yeah,
You're not you're not
you're not
alone.
the only one, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm not the only one, right?
No, don't feel
Yeah,
alone. You're not alone. You're
yeah,
not alone in this world.
yeah. My wife sometimes says no me pelas, right?
Yeah.
No me pelas. Yeah. So I could be developing that myself. Yeah. So I'd like you to try and do this survey. Um, I'd like you to mark the boxes. And you should evaluate yourself as you actually are, not as you think you should be. Yeah? As you actually are, not as you think you should be. So can you see in the chat I've shared with you, the link is the Google Forms, and it looks like this. Get it up on the board here. So there are a bunch of statements, and I'd like you to try to answer it. So I'll give you about 4 minutes to do this. I'll set the timer, and once you're done, uh, I'll ask you to submit at the end, yeah, and we'll see how different people's answers were. Yeah, you don't have to input an email address or anything. You just answer it. Actually, maybe I should change it so that you do have to put your an email address, because then you would receive a copy of this at the end, wouldn't you? That would be probably the better thing to do. I'm going to send the version to you where you have to put your email in. It's just that then you will actually receive a copy of this at the end. Number two, you might have difficulty understanding. I repeat points back during a conversation to clarify my understanding of what the other person's saying. So you say, I'm really upset. I missed my bus this morning, and the person responding said, "You missed your bus?" Yeah, that's repeating back to show that you understand what the other person is saying. Cynthia's done. If you're done, you could give me the thumbs up just to show me that you're done. Thanks. Thanks, Bernardo. All right, let's see what the answers were like. All right. Well, I'll mail the answers, the results of this survey to you at the end, so you can see how other people responded compared to you. And let's have a look at interpret these scales. So, if you put, like me, that you sometimes respond to emails and instant messages while I'm speaking to people on the phone, I sometimes do that, then you give yourself 4 points. All right? Okay, and then go through, total up your answers. Give you about 2 minutes for that. And when you're done, please put your score in the chat. Should be a number. Anywhere between 14 and 72. "51," says Bernardo. I wonder what that's going to mean. So, Bernardo, do you think you are a good listener?
Well, that's not my best, and I guess that if I have 51, it's not my. I guess the more points you have, the worse you are. Is it what the test is about?
Yeah, that's a pretty good guess. So, Bernardo, guess what? You would be considered a good listener.
Am I? Okay, good.
People know that they can approach you if they need
Can you go
someone to
back,
listen.
please, Andrew?
Yeah. They trust you and give you your full attention. So, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Like, guys, the rest of you, please put in your scores into the chat. So let's see if you are a good listener or not. 39 says Luis. That's okay. You're okay with your listening skills, but you can improve them further. Perhaps you could work, Luis, on empathic listening a little bit.
Yeah, I get a little frustrated sometimes when people talk too much.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the interpretation slide. Now, if you want to do this listening quiz with your
Can you go
students,
back, please?
unfortunately, you'd have to use Mind Tools, but it requires a subscription, I think. So that's why we didn't actually use that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cynthia is 44, so you're okay as well. You're in the middle band, Cynthia.
Hey.
60 is David. Ah, you're definitely in the good listening skills area. Patricia is between okay and good. Gemma is 55th, 55, so that's in the good zone. Great. Okay, well, guys, we're gonna have to move on. I can share with share with you this little interpretation slide here. I'll put that in into the chat. Because we're going to have to move on. There's still a lot to do in this 2-hour session. So those are the scores. How did you feel about this assessment? Did it make you think about your skills as a listener? Certainly makes you think about how, interactive listening actually is. Most of it, yeah? It's not just like listening to the radio and listening for bits of news and so on. It's very often it's two or more people interacting together, isn't it? Okay, so let's consider then interactive listening. So active listening uses both open questions like the WH questions, yeah, what are you doing today? And also closed questions that might use yes or no answers. There might be clarification involved. Do you want someone to explain what they've said a little bit more? Could you tell me a bit more about why you think this? There can also be summarizing what the other person has said, showing interest to keep them talking. You're listening for the person's feelings, often expressed in their intonation, tone of voice, whether it's they're speaking loudly, softly, and so on. Active listening could involve signaling to the other person to continue. It means you're being sensitive to the non-verbal behavior, like just the way they're sitting, showing whether they're showing interest. Avoiding interruption and distraction is also important. By probing, we mean like asking more detailed questions to check your own understanding. And then reflecting on what you've already said to the person before asking more questions, and avoiding prejudicial statements, so on. So active listening is an effective tool to better understand your interlocutor. Shall I share that slide with you as well? chat. You can take that away as well. So effective listening involves integrating, exchanging information, learning from what you hear. And it's also about the ways in which participants interpret, predict, and summarize the components of spoken language. Have we missed anything, do you think? Are there anything else? Is there anything else that is involved in effective listening that we haven't mentioned?
I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I can't either at the moment. All right, so what do your students listen to in real life?
Only TikTok.
They listen to reggaeton.
Reggaeton, right? So, yeah, songs, TV programs, obviously, computer games, concerts. Yeah. Gemma's mentioned what about being able to remember information? Would that be part of being a good listener? Yes, I think it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, because memory is an important part. Yeah, memory is being part of a good listener because you need to hold on to what the other person has said and maybe come back to it later, even if the conversation gets interrupted. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure about chats though, because aren't chats usually texts?
It's more
I
like
would,
voice notes, no? Voice
it could be,
messages.
couldn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
or
not
a
sure about that
podcast.
because I would have thought chats are normally texts, whereas I think the person who wrote this maybe was maybe thinking conversations. And we often listen to conversations carried out by other people. Like I was sitting at a coffee shop with a friend in Condessa this morning, and I was like listening into what other people in the coffee shop were saying. Yeah, so overhearing conversations, that could be another thing, couldn't it?
What students are definitely not listening to is instructions.
Well, instructions from the teacher. That's a good one, yes. It might not be from the teacher, but it could be audio instructions. Yeah. Now, we sometimes hear audio instructions when we're in the, for example, in the bus station, right? You need to go to a certain platform, and then, or in the airport. All right. Any other things that students listen to in real life? Well, if not, well, that leads on to the next part, which is What makes students want to listen? So, students want to listen to something if they have a purpose, reason, or need. And they want to get new information. All right, that's a powerful reason for wanting to listen, isn't it? But it could also be that the topic is interesting or relevant to them. They're curious about it. Or they just want to have fun and entertainment. Now, there's a difference between listening in real life and listening in the classroom, isn't there? So, in real life, students usually know in advance about something that's about what is going to be said, like who is speaking or the topic, because they have this context. They're often motivated to listen and they often have a purpose to do so. So in the classroom, we need to try and simulate those conditions, don't we? To do so, we need to introduce what the listening is going to be about by setting the context. Arouse the student's curiosity about the topic and create a need for listening. So it's important to craft meaningful tasks that actually reflect real life situations that the students can relate to. Right. So in real life, every time students listen to something, there's a reaction about it. Students maybe react by doing, drawing, writing, or speaking. But in the classroom, teachers should plan activities where students have the opportunity to express their reactions through writing, speaking, and drawing, and so on. Now, that makes sense so far? Any questions or queries? This is probably just a review for you, right? But do you know the difference between top-down listening and bottom-up listening? Do you know the difference? Maybe you did this on your CELTA course or iCELT course or
Top down,
TKT course. Huh?
top down, is that when you start, like you just mentioned right now, like the topic, what the whole thing is going to be about?
Ah, yeah, pretty much. Bottom up.
I don't know, bottom up might be probably going over the questions first, where, getting them ready for what they're about to listen to.
Hello.
Is that very different though from
Okay.
getting them interested in the topic? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Go
Button
on.
up is like using like some context, kind of words or sounds, just to create meaning or something to where they are listening. Yes, it's like paying attention on details.
Ah, yes. that's right. It's more to do with paying attention to details, isn't it? Yeah. It's bottom up. So top down is the more general. Yeah, bottom up is like the more the detail. It's like the decoding the message, right? Now, when you're teaching kids English or teaching children reading in their own language, right? From the beginning, we usually start with the bottom up, right? Because they need to work on the decoding parts. Yeah. But when you get older and you become a more proficient reader, it's not efficient to be focused on the bottom up the whole time, right? We need to get students to look at the issues like the background knowledge to make sense of what we're listening to. What we already know about the topic, the story or information we are listening to. It fits into a previously established schema or schemata, right? So when we're doing our listening skills or indeed a reading skills lesson, we usually in the lead-in activate schemata. So get them to draw on their background knowledge of the type of text they're going to be listening to or the type of task they're going to be doing. And then there's the bottom up. That's probably this is what you think of listening most of the time. It's like the sound by sound or word by word. And sometimes some teachers think that students are not going to be students are not going to be able to understand a text unless they know most of the vocabulary already, right? But actually that's not the case because we can use the student's background knowledge, pre-existing schemata. They can bring that to a listening exercise to sort of shortcut their understanding, so they can understand a lot more than you think they actually can. Just because they're maybe in their first language, they're familiar with this type of text, even though it might be in Spanish, right? It might be some sort of news story on the radio. And you'd be surprised how similar the news stories might be in English versus the ones in Spanish, because usually in the first paragraph or so on, they have all the key information. Yeah. Now, let's move on to this part here. So, like the reading lesson, you can divide your listening lesson into 3 stages, can't you? There's the pre-task that involves schemata activation. It's the top-down strategies. We can pre-teach vocabulary, which will help them with the bottom-up. So any words you think are going to make them struggle, you can pre-teach the meaning and the pronunciation and perhaps a little bit of the form. So then there's the while task. It's giving the students a purpose for listening to make it interesting and relevant. And then the post. They react to the listening, reflect on what they found hard. in the recording, what they did about it, and ask them maybe 3 key things that they learned from the listening. That's one possible way of doing it. We're going to review each of these 3 stages in the next few slides. So pre-listening activities. These are activities that tended to introduce, motivate, and help students to perform the coming task in an effective way, and they provide a purpose for the task. So we could establish a topic or situation, elicit some language, pre-teach interesting words or facts, give instructions or get them to make predictions about what's coming. Now, the while listening activities intended to provide students with different subskills to develop the skill itself. It's also a way to use grammar, vocab functions through different media. Activities should be planned to practice a subskill. These could be listening for general understanding, just as with reading. Listening for specific information, so they could be listening out for numbers, times, dates, amounts of money. Listening for detail, that's more about sentences and paragraphs, the ideas. Listening to recognize grammar patterns, okay, that's possibly more to do with language learning, but listening to recognize intention or attitude is going to be important for IELTS. Yeah, it's a more advanced sort of listening skill that will be tested on IELTS. And extensive listening is a bit like extensive reading. It's like listening for fun. So things like podcasts could be that, right? That might be difficult to use in the classroom because they're often quite long, but you could think about giving extensive listening for homework. Then we have post-listening activities. These are activities that provide students with a follow-up. Students can see why they had the previous activity helpful to integrate skills. So examples could be role plays. It could be some writing. It could be writing a letter in response to what they've heard. Maybe some sort of protest. Yeah. And speaking activities. There could be debates or discussions. Okay. Now, I think we should move on to the IELTS tips, because in doing so we can sort of integrate what we've looked at so far, and you can do one or two, at least one listening activity, all right? So let me just get this up. There we go. Because this is what we're here for after all, isn't it? A second, here we go. Great. So this is from the same masterclass series. this material is really it's intended to train students of the IELTS, students who want to take the IELTS exam, but a lot of the tips are going to be useful for you as teachers, because it talks about the different stages and subskills that are involved in the IELTS listening paper. All right, so let's focus on this is subskills. So which listening subskills do you think will be tested on the IELTS listening paper? Can you put your ideas in the chat? What listening subskills will be tested in the listening paper? Any ideas?
You cannot write in the chat right now, but I know for sure summarizing or synthesizing is one of them.
Okay. Summarizing, yes. Yeah, you'll probably find that it's called paraphrasing. But that's pretty similar to summarizing. Paraphrasing, summarizing, yeah.
Sentence completion.
Sentence completion. No, is that a subskill in itself, or is that a way that you get to show that you've understood?
Oh, yeah, probably
Yeah.
to
It's
check if they understood.
that's more like a detail, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Well, the ones I have here, this doesn't seem like an exhaustive list, but the ones they want us to focus on here are things like predicting, recognizing synonyms and paraphrasing, recognizing distractors, and understanding connected speech. They seem to think are important. So let's have a look at some tips that they consider important for the listening paper. First one here is understanding context. So the question here is, how can we help students understand the recording better in the 30 seconds before the audio starts? Why is this part so important? And what types of exercise can you use to help them in this part?
It always helps to have them read the questions, right?
Yes, yeah, reading the questions is going to help them with the context, definitely.
Also, it would be a good idea to review some of the vocabulary that they are going to listen to.
Well, yeah, the vocabulary will give them a clue to the context, won't it? Yeah. And remember what we said about activating schemata. Yeah.
Another activity or strategy could be like drawing conclusions in their minds, like what, where, who. So that's really important to them so they can predict who is going to speak, what is going to happen, where are the characters or people or the speakers. So it can work as well after reading the questions. So they can just predicting.
Yes, I think that's pretty much connected to activating schemata, isn't it? It's like who are the speakers, what they're going to be talking about. Yeah, because that will help them to anticipate, what's coming. Yeah, anticipation is an important aspect of successful response to the listening exam.
From what I've seen, this part is crucial in the test. These 30 seconds that they give the students is so important so that they recognize the layout of the exercise, where they have to put the answers, what kind of answers they are being asked for. If they are being asked, I don't know, price, name, address, etc. And then if they don't do this, they arrive at the exercise without any prior knowledge, like you were saying, and they're most likely to fail or to miss a lot more than they would if they had done this previously. If they take advantage of these 30 seconds, then it's going to be so much easier for them to identify where the answers are coming.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, so I think as Vera pointed out, it's important to look at the listening test questions and try and get an idea what the context is. So that's what we need to get the students to do. So here's an activity that you could do. The different sections of the speaking test for speaking. It's a 4-part listening test. And then, so in section 1, you could have something like this. Total number of guests. Susie will organize invitations. So immediately we can see that the context is organizing a party, can't we? Yeah. So what about number 2? Type of gift does the speaker recommend for a child's birthday?
Buying presents, it
Yeah,
could
it
be.
looks like buying presents, doesn't it? Yeah. And number 3, students chose this topic because they have a lot of information about it. They would like to learn more about it, and they think we'll get a higher mark. So there you could draw on some of the vocabulary, right? That will help you to get the context. Higher mark. Más alta calificación. Buenas notas. So what's the clue there? Something academic, isn't it? That's the context. So is it A, B, C, D, E, or F?
D.
Yes, it's a research project. Yeah. And then number 4, assess the impact of loss of habitat. Keyword there: native animals, native animal species. Study their movements. Ah. Could that be D, and could be number 3 B?
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Discussing an assignment.
Yeah. I'm not sure 100% myself whether it's 4 is B or it's D. So there's a certain ambiguity there, isn't there? Yeah. Maybe it will become clearer as we go through this material. So, understanding the context. So the test tip here is the following. Before you do each section, the test takers have 30 to 45 seconds to look at the questions. So it's recommended they use this time to study the questions and try to predict what they might hear. So understanding the context. In the introduction to the listening section, they will be told who the people are and what they're talking about and why. So this is called the context, and it helps you to understand the topic. It's not written on the question paper. After the introduction, the test takers get a short time to look at the questions. Studying the questions before they listen can help them predict what the speakers will talk about. That makes sense? All right. So that's context. Let's now consider following a conversation. In what section of the exam do students have to follow a conversation? What skills do they need to develop to choose the right answer? And what type of information do they need to identify? Any ideas? This is open. Anyone can have a guess at this.
I guess that is the part number 1, the section that they are going to listen some conversations about social interests or matters, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
And here is predicting. Maybe one of the skills that they need to develop to choose the right answer is predicting. They have to think and identify keywords or drawing conclusions on what is happening next.
Yeah. That's right. So predicting is going to be important, isn't it? Yeah. And also listening out for specific information. Yeah, or not necessarily the same words, but what we call synonyms, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much like the reading because they have also to do that. The sections are mostly the same. It's just the difference is one is reading, the other one is listening, but they have to look for synonyms, context, etc. So
That's right. Aye. You could have a look at the tape script here. Can I have a couple of volunteers to be A and B and read out the audio script for us? I don't actually have the audio, but maybe a couple of you. Valeria, thank you. Can we have a B? Could you
can
be
be B
A,
if you
Valeria?
want.
Yeah, please. Thank you. So Valeria, you start, please.
Okay. Hi Sam, we'd better start planning the party. It's in less than 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. There isn't much to do, is there?
Well, we need to sort our food for a start.
Why don't we just order some pizza?
But we always do that. Let's do something a bit different. Besides, it's pretty expensive.
What about barbecue then? Or we could just do hot dogs.
Hmm, too much preparation involved. There are a lot coming, you know.
Sandwiches then? That's easy enough.
Sandwiches? That's a good idea. Hang on. That would be even more preparation than the barbecue. Better go back to the original idea, I suppose.
Pizza it is then.
Now, we also need to think about the music and invitations.
Well, we don't need to buy invitations. I think we should just do them on the computer and keep costs down.
Good idea. And what about music then?
We can just use the same stuff we had last time. It's fine.
Okay. Well, if we don't let people know soon, there won't be anyone there. So let's make that our priority. Have you got your laptop?
Yeah, told you there wasn't much to do.
All right, so put your answers to number 1 and number 2 in the chat. Thank you for reading those out. Very authentic. Yeah, so A was number 1 was A and number 2 was C, correct. That's right. Now, how can we get our students to improve on this type of exercise? Any suggestions?
Well, in my opinion, I would like to start the class like with a big question. Like, for example, I don't know, do you make parties? What kind of food do you eat? So they can bring up their ideas, no? And they can bring
Right.
some vocabulary as
Yeah.
friends or whatever. And regularly they can mention step by step. Or what is like the party process, no? To develop or to organize a party or a barbecue, and they can start bringing these ideas and the process. And after that, we can analyze some keywords, key concepts, and vocabulary that they may listen.
What
And
type of vocabulary, Vera?
in this case, is the one related with food. Yes, and that's important to know about some grammar as well, like listening this part of how do you say like contractions or negatives as well, and that kind of vocabulary that they needed.
But what about making suggestions?
Got it? Yeah.
Right. What do we call those? Is that grammar? Can you remember back to your teacher training courses? Remember the different systems. We've got grammar, vocabulary, discourse, functions, pronunciation. So what type of language do we need to make students aware of, do you think? Yeah.
In this case, it's a bit like more casual conversation, so it would be more we could also even include a little bit of the culture of the people that are talking, like the slangs, the way that they speak naturally with their friends, etc.
All right, but remember then, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, isn't it? Because they want to maintain the relationship. So you've got to, you when you're having a conversation like this, you can't be too definite, can you? Right? So you've got to use sort of vague or hedging, what we call vague language or hedging language, right? So not to offend the other person's feelings. So it's a skill of like listening to and accepting suggestions, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
that's the type of conversation.
suggesting is what we call functional language, isn't it? Yeah. So if students are aware that suggestions are being made and these suggestions may be accepted or rejected, yeah, well, that will help them with this type of activity, won't it? Can you see any functions here for suggesting and either accepting the suggestion or rejecting the suggestion?
Sure, for example, here appears when like they say like let's go back or something like that.
Let's, yes, exactly.
Yes.
Let's do. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like, why don't we? Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can maybe give students a little bit of practice doing this sort of negotiation themselves, where they have to do some suggesting and perhaps give them some of these useful phrases. Why don't we? Right? And they have to organize their own party. That's what we call a task, right? Give them do some task-based learning.
Well, another kind of vocabulary could be like some connectors, like a connectors of addition, or as you mentioned, like organizing as well, like as how do you call it? I remember the name is like sequence. Yes, like connectors of sequence as well.
Yeah. Now, when we're working on this sort of functional language, it's important that you actually give the way, you teach the students the way to respond, like, good idea. Yeah. Like, X, it is then. And how to reject. Like, for example, the person says, hang on then, that would be even more preparation than the barbecue. That's a way of kind of turning down the idea, isn't it? So, yeah, students need a bit of familiarity with this sort of functional language. And they also need to know what is the relationship between the speakers. Is it a formal relationship? What do you think, Luis? Between Sam and this other person, does it look like a formal, like a business relationship, or is it two friends speaking?
Oh, in this case, I think that it is like friends, like informal, formal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, that's important to establish, isn't it? Yeah? That's part of what we call the activating of the schemata, because the students, if they know that it's an informal conversation, then they can anticipate that the language contained within it will also be informal. Now, it sounds obvious, but we need to draw the students' attention to this. So this is some tips. Identifying the speakers. So in sections 1 and 3, conversations between 2 or 3 people. Each speaker will have a different voice to help you tell them apart. It's probably male or female, younger and older. Both speakers will talk equally and you will hear answers from both speakers. For section 1, there's normally one person who has to find out information from the other. Each speaker has a specific purpose in mind when they talk. We say that their language has a function, like giving a suggestion or responding to a suggestion. So we use different language, what we call exponents, for different functions. I was thinking about this the other day when I was riding to work on my bicycle, and I heard someone shout out, "Aguas!" So do you know what I thought it was?
Maybe rain.
Rain.
Well, no, yeah,
Someone
I
was
thought.
throwing water to you.
Well, I thought there was some sort of danger, right? Because in Spanish, aguas means there's a danger coming, right? It could have been maybe a branch falling from a tree, right? Or there's a car coming in front of me, right? Aguas. But in fact, right, that wasn't the function. It wasn't a warning. It was in fact an advertisement because I was riding past a stall, a puesto, right? And they had aguas de horchata, aguas de Jamaica, right? So it was actually an advertisement. So aguas there would be that's what we call the exponent, yeah. But it can have different functions given the situation, right? So it could be a warning, advertencia, right? Or it could be an advertisement. Does that make sense? Function, exponent. Now, let's move on to attitude and opinion. Recognizing attitude and opinion. In what section can we find this type of exercise? What do candidates have to do? Are the sections or decisions in order? How can we help students improve the results in this kind of exercise? Okay, well, I'm going to speed up a bit because I'm not going to have time for actually listening, okay? So now this is related to this talking about
Nomás lo puse ni la revisé. Bajito, ¿me dijiste?
Sí.
this is describing research project, I think, that we saw earlier.
I guess this kind of exercise appears in parts 3 and 4, something like that, right? Like educational and training situations.
Yeah. Have a look through the transcript. Okay, I think that's a bit confusing. So I'm just going to move on. So identifying attitudes and opinions. In listening sections 1 and 3, the speakers are often trying to make a decision or reach an agreement. Identifying this, the speaker's opinions can help you to answer the question correctly. So also in persuading and suggesting in listening sections 1 and 3 in order to reach a decision, you will hear speakers make suggestions, agree or disagree, or try and persuade each other. And reaching a decision, sections 1 and 3, you will often hear people suggesting solutions, reaching a decision. Discussion on the advantages and disadvantages of each suggestion. Okay, so there it's also important to be aware of this sort of functional language that we mentioned earlier for making suggestions, persuading, and so on. Now, for some questions in the listening paper, you need to look at a map of a place or a plan of a building. Right? So here you can see a town library. Now, for this part, it's going to be useful if you teach your students some of this language for giving directions. Right? And I've got some examples here. Language for giving directions. So perhaps you could give students practice in giving directions like don't go through the first door, but turn sharp right just past you'll see a bookcase in front of you. Can you think of any other useful language for directions that you could teach them? I mean, there's the basic ones like turn right, turn left, go straight on, right past there. Yeah, prepositions of place are always useful, aren't they? Yeah, that's going to help. Yeah. No. Going to give you this as a listening task. Let's see how well you can do it. So into the chat. Please click on the chat and you'll get this Google form. And there are just 4 questions. So you have to listen and label the plan, the different parts of the little rooms, right? You might want to check the students know what periodicals means. You can kind of guess though, can't they? Because it's similar to periodical in Spanish. So get them to draw on their background knowledge of language and so on. Yeah. Local history collection. So that would be, as it suggests, history of the local area. Reference books could be like encyclopedias. Okay, so let's play and good luck. See how well you do.
You'll hear the librarian of a new.
You'll notice it's an Australian accent.
You'll hear the librarian of a new town library talking to a group of people who are visiting the library.
Okay, everyone. So, here we are at the entrance to the town library. My name is Anne, and I'm the chief librarian here, and you'll usually find me at the desk just by the main entrance here. So, I'd like to tell you a bit about the way the library is organised and what you'll find where. And you should all have a plan in front of you. Well, as you see, my desk is just on your right as you go in. And opposite this, the first room on your left has an excellent collection of reference books and is also a place where people can read or study peacefully. Just beyond the librarian's desk on the right is a room where we have up-to-date periodicals such as newspapers and magazines. And this room also has a photocopier, in case you want to copy any of the articles. If you carry straight on, you'll come into a large room, and this is the main library area. There is fiction in the shelves on the left, and non-fiction materials on your right, and on the shelves on the far wall, there is an excellent collection of books relating to local history. We're hoping to add a section on local tourist attractions too, later in the year. Through the far door in the library, just past the fiction shelves, is a seminar room, and that can be booked for meetings or talks. And next door to that is the children's library, which has a good collection of stories and picture books for the under 11s. Then there's a large room to the right of the library area. That's the multimedia collection, where you can borrow DVDs and so on. And we also have CD-ROMs you can borrow to use on your computer at home. It was originally the art collection, but that's been moved to another building. And that's about it. Oh, there's also the library office on the left of the librarian's desk. Okay. Now, does anyone have any questions? Yes, thank you, sir.
How was that? Tricky now. Now, remember, unlike most Cambridge exams, you only get one time. Yeah. So some students get a bit freaked out about that they only get one listen. So, you know, we do need to give them practice and get them confident So I'd recommend that you actually, before you submit your answers, you talk with your partner in the breakout rooms. So this is a good practice to get to do with your students who are training for this. I'll give you 3 minutes to compare your answers, but before I do so, I will, into the chat, share with you the audio script. Right, so you through into the chat there, you can see that there is the diagram, but also the audio script. So talk with your partner about what answers you gave, and were your answers the same? I'll give you 4 minutes. And then we'll check the answers together into the breakout full room. It's quite a tricky one, that, wasn't it? But fear not. You've got the audio script there, so and I can give you I can actually share the audio with you, I think. So you can use this yourself. It's going into the chat now. You can download it. But I got this from the Cambridge website, this whole activity, so you can use it with your students and yourselves. You've got the audio there, and then the whole like mini lesson to use with your own students. So let's just have a look at how well you answered this. I'm kind of curious to see. Please press submit. I've got 10 responses. All right, so question 11. Oh, 90% of us got that right. Reference books. Yes, 100% got number 12 right. Gosh, you're doing pretty well. 12G, yes. 13. Oh, fewer responses. I wonder why that was. Fewer correct responses. Only 70% got that right. Yeah. So, using Google Forms can be useful especially if you teach online, because then you can sort of pinpoint which questions are problematic for the students, like yeah. 13 and 14.
Hey, I'm checking the answers, and I think for number 14, it was selected incorrectly because I'm checking for the answer of the number 14 because I'm checking the transcript, and they don't even mention computers at any point. So I think the correct answer was children's books.
Well, okay. Well, I'm looking at the material. The key to the sample task, as provided by Cambridge, and maybe they made a mistake with the material because, according to them, 14 is B. Yeah, children's books. Oh, yes. Look, yeah. Maybe I made it. Maybe the mistake was mine when I made the Google Forms. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. Sorry, apologies. So yeah, be careful if you're using Google Forms that you actually put the right answers in the correct place. So I need to go back and change that. All right, so that's a learning point for me, yeah. Okay, so what can we say about this type of listening task, following directions? Here's the tips. Get students to study the map or plan carefully before they listen. Having a clear image in your mind will help you understand what you hear. They may need to follow directions to locate a place on the map or plan. The distractors for this type of task might be extra buildings marked on the map, or they might be extra options in a list of possible answers.
We're making several references on the same room, and then, that got me lost on 14th.
Yeah.
That's the one that I had wrong.
Yeah. And then labeling a map. Sometimes a map completion task asks you to identify an area on a map, then choose an answer from a list. For this type of question, you may need to familiarize yourself with both the list of options and the features on the map before you start. So there's a lot of information to process, isn't there? Yeah. And sometimes when students get panicked, they don't maintain that focus, they get distracted. Yeah, so they do need practice with this sort of thing. Very quickly, before we do our Kahoot quiz, following a talk. This is section 4. How can we get students to get more answers in section 4? Any ideas? Well, The suggested is about the suggested tip is to do with what we call signposting words. Do you know what signposting words are?
Yes, like first of all, it's important to.
Yeah. So it's recommended that we train our students to identify signposting words because they sort of guide the listener through the talk, right? And if they can identify those, they can identify maybe a shift in the topic, right? So a shift in the topic also often indicates you should move on to the next question. Using signposting words as well as headings in the notes can help you guide through the topics and the questions. So speakers in these types of talks often use these signposting words like, let's move on. Yeah. So you can get them to identify the signposting words in the talk, you know, like this one, let's move on to look at. You know? Are there any others that you can see? On the downside, is that a signposting word? Well, it sort of indicates the person is going to talk about the negatives, doesn't it? And then moving on to talk about a different plant, different crop, talking about tea, and then the final plant. So here we can anticipate that the talk is coming to an end. Makes sense? Now make use of
Yes.
tape scripts, audio scripts. Oh. So following a talk, it's important to identify main ideas. Questions in the listening paper focus on main points made by the speakers, so it's important to identify them. Understanding the explanation. Help you prepare for the listening, read the information in the questions carefully, try to predict what information you will hear. Don't be worried if you see technical terms in the listening questions. They will usually be explained. Shift in topic indicates you should move on to the next question. Signposting words, as well as headings in the notes, help you guide through the topics and the questions. Okay, so here are some kind of a summary. Get students to use the time to read the questions and see the topics. Get them to underline keywords to help them focus on questions. Encourage them to think of synonyms to predict likely content. Questions follow the order of the recording. So keep going. When they're writing the answers, make sure that they stick to the word limit. So After listening to the recording, they have 10 minutes to transfer the answers to the answer sheet. So they shouldn't copy across words from the printed question paper, such as articles or prepositions, because they may take them over the word limit. Yeah. And intonation. Speakers' intonation or tone of voice can indicate their attitude to something, either positive or negative. This can be useful in finding a right answer. Now, let's give you a little quiz to finish. Still got time, haven't we? Yeah. Let's start this. See how much you know about the listening paper then. Do you have your phones at the ready? All right, let's begin. Ah, there we go. Sorry, it's paused. Here you go. How many questions are there in the IELTS speaking test, listening test? Sorry, that was a bit quick, wasn't it? Sorry about that. 2, yeah, well, the answer is 40. And 4 sections, right? Next. How many types of question does the listening test mainly have? So the answer is 3. 3 types of questions. Most of us got that right. Well done. Any restrictions in the number of words for each answer? Yes, there are. So you have to be careful. Yeah, you might have to remember they might have to omit articles or prepositions. Spelling a problem? Can be. Yes. Ah. By test paper, they mean like the question paper. Yeah. Yeah, with all the questions on it. So you can, if you're doing the paper-based IELTS, you can actually make notes on it. And I think you might be able to make notes on the.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
the issue was understanding the question.
Yeah. Also on the computer-based, I think you can actually make notes on the question paper. Yeah. And they're not marked. Yeah, so that's why it's important that you do need to encourage encourage them to be careful when they transfer their answers. Yeah. So well done there. So the answer is yes. Yeah. Capitalization. Interesting one. So the answer is no. Capitalization is not important. That
Not
applies
sure
also.
about that. I believe that is incorrect.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is actually right. Yeah, that capitalization is not important.
But
feel
when
free
you
to check.
transfer, sorry, but when you transfer the answers to the answer sheet, they say that you can see there that you have to write in capital letters. So I think it is important.
Okay, but will you actually be penalized for not doing that? I don't know. Do they appear in order? Yes, they do. Yeah. So the questions usually follow the order of the information in the audios. To read and check. Yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah. Huh. Wonder how they work that out. 6. How many times do you have to chances to read the questions in section 4? Huh, the answer is 1. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. On the paper-based, obviously. Pencils only. Abbreviations. Answer is sometimes. Is there a true, false, not given? No, the answer to this one. Yes, there's definitely not true, false, not given. Well done, Bea. Valeria and Sin is number 1. Well done. If you think that information, though, some of that was inaccurate, feel free to contact me and I will correct this. Now, next time is going to be, what skill are we going to be looking at?
I think it's writing.
Is it writing or is it speaking?
It's writing. Speaking is at the end.
Yes. I think you're right. It's writing, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. So, and that's going to be the 9th of December. No, sorry. 20th of January. So it's quite a break, isn't it? So you've got plenty of time to do this work on the writing paper between now and then. Yeah, 3-hour self-study online writing paper. And then we're going to be doing the writing paper on Monday the 20th at 5 p.m. Okay. So that will be Unit 4. And there are these different sections to get you acquainted. Any questions or doubts?
Everything okay.
Everything good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming and participating so well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy your descanso, Guadalupe Reyes.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you in
Thank you.
January. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.